Good evening and thanks very much for joining us. I'm Brittany Ramsey. The province has placed northwestern Ontario under an emergency order due to the raging wildfires threatening a number of northern First Nations. The order allows public roads and other property to be closed to make way for any further evacuations that may be necessary. Ryan Benazzo has details.
As wildfires continue to force hundreds of northern residents from their homes, the province has taken a step to make it easier to conduct additional evacuations. On Wednesday morning, the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry issued an emergency area order for the entire Northwest region. Minister Greg Rickford says the order allows the government to restrict Crown land or close roads if necessary.
We may have to exercise some temporary closures to provide for the fact that Pikangikum and or Red Lake may be required to evacuate.
More than 700 people had already been driven from their homes as of Tuesday, but hundreds more may have to leave very soon. Some will have to travel as far east as Timmins, a community that also declared a state of emergency in preparation for the evacuees.
To clear the way for the city of Timmins to receive what may ultimately be the most of the community of Pikangikum, nearly at least 3,000 people.
These fires are continuing to grow.
Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand says the fires are still encroaching on communities like Poplar Hill, which has already been evacuated, and Red Lake, which has not, but is preparing should that be needed.
We have about 74-person crews assigned to fires at the moment, and but we're still seeing anywhere from 10 to over 20 fires, new fires a day emerging on the landscape.
That's because one key ingredient is, thus far, missing.
We really haven't seen much in terms of significant rainfall in many weeks, and looking into the forecast, there isn't much hope there as well. So we're hoping for rain.
Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
Now, about 400 of those evacuees are being housed here in Thunder Bay. The district's medical officer says the low COVID-19 numbers across the region make it possible to serve as a host site. Mitchell Ringos has more on that and the latest on the vaccine rollout.
I do feel it's fairly safe for evacuees to be here.
Dr. Janet DeMille says northwestern Ontario is in good shape when it comes to COVID-19. That's why she signed off on the plan to host hundreds of people fleeing wildfires near the Poplar Hill and Deer Lake First Nations. Neither of those communities have any COVID cases at this time. DeMille says the health unit will continue to work with the local hotels housing the evacuees to try and ensure it stays that way now that they're here.
We've always worked with those hotels around the COVID measures and the policies and procedures that they have to have in place to be able to support the ongoing safety of anybody in those hotels.
For the 7th consecutive day, there are no new COVID cases in the Thunder Bay district, and there's now just one active case throughout northwestern Ontario thanks to a continued strong vaccine rollout.
At some point, we're going to run out of people who actually need immunizations, which is a really good problem to have.
The district set a new vaccination record last week, and there's enough supply for that to continue.
We actually have the capabilities of immunizing up to 1,400 people per day.
That means walk-in vaccinations will continue at both the Coliseum and now at the Boralaskan building on the Lakehead University campus as well. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
Well, the debate over vaccine passports continues. Business leaders continue to pressure the government for a passport that would provide clarity and safety assurances as they get set to welcome back customers. But the Ford government says any such move is the responsibility of the federal government. Colin DeMello reports.
As the number of vaccinated Ontarians grows, so do the calls for an Ontario-based vaccine passport.
The provincial government in this case has to provide something to people to be able to show they've been vaccinated. Who else is going to provide the proof of vaccination? The province has all the records in their system of exactly who got vaccinated, where and when, and how many times.
The call from Toronto's mayor comes as some businesses and colleges revealed new vaccination requirements in order to gain access. And as COVID-19 restrictions loosen, infectious disease specialists believe it is inevitable.
There's no way you can skirt this issue. I really like the approach that Quebec has taken, that they have really essentially promised that they won't go back into some form of a lockdown mode. But that's with providing vaccine passports as a way of incentivizing everyone towards getting fully vaccinated.
But the government has so far resisted calls for an Ontario-based vaccine card. Today, the Solicitor General explained why.
A decision will be made whether you want to disclose, whether you have had 2 doses, whether you've been fully vaccinated, and whether you as an individual want to show that proof. But we will not, as a province, be imposing a vaccine passport on Ontario residents.
Ontario isn't the only province to reject the idea. Residents in Alberta and Saskatchewan won't receive cards either. Manitoba, however, has already begun issuing proof of vaccination.
Manitobans will get certain benefits with this card. This is the card. This is what it'll look like.
But the province says vaccinated residents have already received a receipt, suggesting that should suffice.
If individual businesses or companies or organizations are requesting proof of vaccine, then what is currently available is the piece of paper that you receive post-vaccination.
Leaving residents with a piece of paper to prove that they've been protected against COVID-19.
Meanwhile, there's new urgency to get young people vaccinated after a warning from Ontario's top doctor. Dr. Kieran Moore says the highest rate of COVID infection in the province is among 18 to 39-year-olds. And with a potential 4th wave coming in the fall, he says the proof that vaccination works is in the pudding.
Over the last 3 months, of the 45,970 of 19 to 29-year-olds that tested positive for COVID-19, over 96% were unvaccinated cases not yet protected through immunization. In the 12 to 17 age group, of the 11,721 cases we have had in Ontario over the last 3 months, that number was 99.3%.
A man arrested in connection to a 2018 homicide in Chapels Park will stand trial on the charge of manslaughter early next year. Jonathan Yellowhead of the Edmontoon First Nation was first arrested in December 2018 in connection to the death of Braden Jacob. 17-year-old Jacob went missing December 6th and was found at Chapels Park 3 days later. Yellowhead was initially charged with second-degree murder, but following a preliminary hearing, it was determined there was not enough evidence to proceed to trial, and the charge was reduced to manslaughter. Defense counsel Neil McCartney says the trial is expected to take place in January of 2022. Also, Yellowhead is expected to enter a guilty plea later this month on an aggravated assault charge tied to an incident at the district jail in September 2019. Several other individuals were also charged in connection with the attack that left another inmate with serious injuries. Yellowhead remains in custody in southern Ontario. A cross-country walk in support of residential school survivors has made its way to Thunder Bay. Patricia Ballantyne is walking from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, all the way to Ottawa to pay tribute to all those who have been impacted by the schools. A residential school survivor herself, Ballantyne needed to do a walk for all survivors as well as families who lost loved ones in the schools. Ballantyne says she's been joined by 16 people on her walk so far. Everyone has been really receptive. They're walking to Ottawa with the hopes of having a sit-down with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. She wants to draw attention to foster care programs and how children are still being taken away from their families. She's been visiting reserves along her journey and says being an outlet for the elders to tell their stories has made it easier for her to carry on.
Because I was helping elders, because they were starting to share their stories as soon as we stop and talk to them. They'd share their stories and they break down and tell us you're doing the right thing, it's getting out there. And then the non-First Nations people would stop and get more information and they would learn about it and they'd apologize and say we're sorry of what our ancestors did to your ancestors, and it's just really been all positive.
Ballantyne and her fellow walkers plan to visit the site of the former St. Joseph Residential School here in Thunder Bay tomorrow before continuing their walk on Friday. A major traffic disruption today along a busy stretch of Red River Road. 3 lanes between Hill and Rupert Streets were shut down for several hours while crews dealt with a major water leak. It was discovered by staff at Eco Superior, who found a pool of water outside their office on Tuesday. While there were reports the problem may have resulted from a pinhole leak, city officials say that wasn't the case. They say an excavation of the site determined the problem was a cracked water line. The roadway was scheduled to reopen later this afternoon. Well, everything is set to go for the city's 12th annual Festival of India this Saturday. Similar to last year, it will be a drive-in event held at the CLE parking lot. From 3 p.m. on, residents can enjoy food, dancing, and music. Even as the province moves into step 3 of reopening, festival organizer Dr. Prashant Jani says that the drive-in approach is the best way to keep residents safe. The setup in the parking lot will not be impacted by the vaccine center at the CLE. The event is free as long as locals register online prior to the event. That way the festival can make sure there's enough food for everyone while adhering to social gathering restrictions.
So when they drive in, they park in front of the stage. There's a distance of 6 feet between the two cars. And people can come out of the car, bring their lawn chairs, sit in the car wherever they feel comfortable, and they will be able to watch the spectacular show. And in addition, there will be interactive dance workshops. So anybody wants to learn, there is opportunity there as well. So there's food, music, dances, fun for everybody.
Jani says their Festival of Colors is a much more interactive event, so they're going to delay that until September in hopes of holding it as a regular festival.
Festival of India, one of my favorites. The food there is unbelievable,
Yeah,
and
no
Dr.
kidding.
Jani is the best. I actually saw him at a Starbucks a little while ago. He didn't remember who I was, so I guess he left a better impression than I did. But anyway, Fiona, you leave great impressions. How's the weather?
Looking pretty good, and for those who are wondering about the festival, looking pretty good for that too. We had a fair amount of cloud cover today, a low of 13, definitely cooler than yesterday, a high of 23 and a humidex that only reached about 26. So it was a bit of a break if you found yesterday a little bit too muggy. Winds were fairly light northeast, 5 to 15 kilometers per hour, but the nicest thing for many people, especially if you don't have air conditioning, is there was much drier air out there. And if we take a look at what's happening across the region, that seems to be the case for today at least. As we head westward into Fort Frances, Atikokan, Upsala, they're all at about 25. The humidex, really not a huge factor, making it feel maybe a degree or two warmer than that, but really not all that much. We've got loads of sunshine up into Kenora and Dryden. It isn't until we hit Red Lake that in the last few hours, the smoke has become more of a factor in the Red Lake area once again, and it's just the direction of the wind as it moves in. They're currently at 24, as is Sioux Lookout, and Pickle Lake 23, 25 in Armstrong. Definitely cooler in Greenstone at 21 under mostly cloudy skies. Marathon also at 21. But Sault Ste. Marie, all right, they've got a lot of showers moving just south of Lake Superior and coming up the eastern portion of the region. And right now, Sault Ste. Marie, although the temperature is at 28, the humidex hit 35 just 2 hours ago, and then showers hit, heavy showers, a little bit of a thunderstorm moved through. So at this moment, humidex not a factor, but what we're expecting is that once the system passes through, the humidity will be a lot less on the eastern side of the lake, and things will begin to feel a little bit drier, and they'll get some relief. Here in the city of Thunder Bay, it's going to be really quite a nice night. Most of the clouds starting to dissipate, partly cloudy skies, and a low of 13 with winds from the north-northeast, 7 to 13 kilometers per hour. As we head into the second half of the week, temperatures definitely on the rise. There's a lot of heat to the west that's going to be pushing in. It's going to be pushing up into the prairies starting, well, basically tomorrow, and that's going to deal with some of the smoke that they're feeling, but it's also going to bring temperatures up, and that heat is going to work its way in. So it's going to be a couple of days before we get it, but we are looking at the weekend to heat up quite a bit. So maybe the Festival of India being a drive-in event, probably not a bad idea. Everybody's going to be plugging in those air conditioners. I'll have more details on what will happen for the rest of the weekend later on in the News Hour.
All right, thanks very much for that, Fiona. Well, there are growing calls to ease some more travel restrictions for Canadians who are fully vaccinated. We'll have details on that coming up after the break.
We will be making announcements about the next phases and next steps of reopening.